Kia ora ngā hoa. So if you don't know me already and you haven't met me before, my name is Sean Ashley, known as Mr. Ashley here on Mr. Ashley's Place. And what I thought I'd do today, this is a video more directed at teachers. Now, I've seen a lot of fantastic resources, and if you're a teacher watching my channel and you want to get into doing this too, get into YouTubing, I definitely recommend it, because some of the best ideas I've gotten in my career have been from watching you, the educator community, and seeing what you're doing in your classroom, and it inspires me to take some of your concepts and tweak it to the cultural society within New Zealand, if it's from a foreign country, or just basically steal the idea altogether. And so what I thought I'd do today is I'd just share some of the technology that I have in my room. Now, I'm really lucky. I'm in what would be considered Decile 10 school here in New Zealand. We're getting rid of the decile system. Basically, what that means is hi Ryan, we're at kind of the top tier in terms of education. We live in a pretty well-off community, and so it's easy for us to reach out to the community and get lots of good resources and things like that. And so we don't need as much government funding as other schools. Now, we're pretty lucky in that we've got a lot of devices in the school. So most of the classes, particularly in this syndicate, are provided with 10 Chromebooks, and I've over the years wheeled and dealed and scrounged a lot of desktops as well. So I've got a few desktops in my classroom and some iPads as well. And so that, for most schools, that's a pretty standard arrangement. You'll have a few laptops, some desktops, you might have some tablets and that sort of thing. And so we won't go into that too much. Now, the things that I've got aside from that is in our New Zealand curriculum, we've started exploring technology as part of the curriculum. And so some of the things that I've tried to get my hands on are single board computers. And so my favorite one probably is this one here called Microbit. And basically you buy this little single board computer, and it's a really good way to get kids into the physical aspect of coding a computer. Now, things like Scratch and all that sort of stuff, Studio.code and things, are fantastic sites. I really do recommend them. But if you want to take your students to the next step and let them have a physical experience of actually putting their code into another computer to make that computer do something, as opposed to just running animations and stuff, this is a good way to go. You can see how tiny it is. It's got a little these little LED lights on the front here, and it does all kinds of really cool things. It comes with a special battery pack, so you can run it independently of the computer. So me and my son used this one over the holidays, and we programmed it to become a Pokédex. So it runs the word Pokédex. And so you can program them to do basically anything that you can think of. You're only limited by what you can fit on the LED screen. Now, what I reckon this is best for is running science experiments. You can do a lot of cool and interesting science experiments from this, ranging from things to do with acceleration, because it's got a built-in accelerometer, testing light. We did a cool experiment last year, taking water, the soil moisture content, so measuring how much water there was in the soil. So that's really good, particularly if you're in New Zealand now with all the droughts that are going on. It'd be a fun and interesting activity to do. The downsides of it is you're limited by the LCD screen. That being said, they're very cheap and inexpensive. I picked this one up for $30, and you can pick up basically a class set of them for about $300 from PB Tech and other places like that. They'll sell them to you in sets of 10. And so in my school setting, that would be fantastic, because we'd get 10 Chromebooks for a year 5 classroom. So, you know, I've just got one for my classroom because I bought it myself, and we tutor with it occasionally. Another single board computer that I have is called Raspberry Pi. A lot of people will already be, Raspberry. A lot of people will be already familiar with that. I'll just turn it there. So this is my Raspberry Pi, and this is a single board computer too, but it's much more like a desktop. And when I say it's like a desktop, if you're an adult and you're of the generation of the 80s and 90s, it's quite comparable to probably like a 386 or something like that. It runs its especially created operating system for it called Raspbian, and you can do a lot of cool coding programs for it. The cool thing about it is it's designed to teach children coding. So you can learn block coding, or you can learn script coding, mostly around Python and Scratch. But the other things is I've heard people using it to run 3D printers. You can program the computer to run robots and all that sort of stuff as well. So it's a lot more versatile than probably Microbit, but it's not something that you'd kind of just go and leave outside on a scientific testing station like Microbit. It's a little bit more expensive. It's about $700. It's about $70 to $100 depending on where you get them from, and you've got to buy the keyboard and the mouse and have like a monitor or a TV to plug it into. So at the moment it's plugged into my classroom display unit, which is basically a TV with an HDMI cable, and it works really well. And what it does too is it gives me another computer access point for the students in the classroom, but it also gives me the options of using it to teach coding using the built-in games, being Minecraft is a smaller version of Minecraft is built into the operating system, but there's also coding programs like Scratch and Python and a lot of other stuff. The next thing that I want to show is virtual reality headsets. Now, these are becoming more and more popular in schools. I have two at the moment, two different brands. There's this one here. Normally it'd come with a remote control. I got this one for free. And it didn't have the remote control with it, but it still works really well. And this is good for doing virtual tours of places. And the reason why that's cool is sometimes when you're explaining something to the students and trying to get across a landmark or something like that, or an object, explaining doesn't quite get it across, and neither does something like just showing them pictures. These guys are a technological generation, so seeing something in a virtual reality is really, really cool for them. So I do a lot of virtual reality tours and stuff using this one. And also just giving kids the experience of VR. It blows their mind sometimes. Take a step back in time. I'm really still into these. I know some people might think that's not technology, but really it is. It was way before its time when you think about it. And it works basically on the same premise as one of these, except I would say that this is analog and this is digital. Okay, so I still have I think I've got about 8 or 9 of these at the moment, and occasionally I'll put in landmark reels so kids can see different places around the world, and I have it set up next to a globe or something like that. You can pick these up relatively cheaply, but they are starting to gather a lot of popularity within the collector market, and so they're becoming quite expensive. So if you're thinking about something like this, there's 2 things that you can do. So what I did is I talked to the people in my local community and said, do you have any that you don't want anymore? And a lot of people gave them to me, which I'm super appreciative of. Or I just went around and found really cheap ones that people didn't want anymore and tried to buy them all up cheaply, and then over time just collected the reels. Now, when they stopped making these, Viewmaster tried to see the light at the end of the tunnel and started making these. So this is the Viewmaster virtual reality headset, and they made it with a whole bunch of sets of reels. And now this is about 11 years old now. And so it came with a whole series of tours and these special virtual reality, augmented reality reels. And what you did is you put the reel down on the table, and you put the virtual reality headset on and stick your phone inside, same as this one. You need a phone, like a smartphone for it. And you could take a tour. Hi, Fletch. You could take a tour on a location that you wanted to look at. And there's all kinds of cool things like space and stuff. And it came out with games as well, Batman, He-Man, all that sort of stuff. And we were using this into last year, using it for science projects and using it for space and taking tours and stuff. And the bummer is because the technology is so old now, and they weren't selling many of these units anymore, Hasbro decided that they would stop putting the app onto the App Store and Google Play and things like that, and you can't get the apps. So if you've seen one of these and you're thinking, oh, that would be good for the classroom, the VR headset is still fantastic. It's a really good headset. It's a really good, cheap, accessible headset for people. Don't buy the reels. You're wasting your money because they don't do the app anymore. Now, the headset itself, is based on the technology that is used for Google Cardboard. So if you've ever played with a Google Cardboard, it's very comparable. It's got the focusing lenses there. You click it open, phone goes in there, and then it's got a lever just like a Viewmaster, and then you push that and the little button touches the screen to activate different things in whatever app you're looking at. Now, I still use this. We were using it just today, and so it's still really, really good. And so, like I say, if you're looking for a good entry-level virtual reality headset, you can pick these ones up for about $11. These are really, really good too, and you can pick these up secondhand relatively cheaply now because people don't want them because the apps don't work anymore. So keep an eye out for these if you're interested. And then in conjunction with this, I had started looking for a replacement for all the reels because I didn't want these if all I could do was look at 360 YouTube videos, because that gets boring after a while. And I found this awesome piece of technology. Now, this has been around for about 2 years now, and I've only just started seeing it popping up in shops in New Zealand. And I picked my one up from a PB Tech, and this is called MergeCube. Now, MergeCube works very much in the same way or same premise as the virtual reality, the augmented reality reels for the Viewmaster, but what it does is it's essentially QR codes printed onto the outside of this cube, and then you look through the virtual reality headset or using a smartphone or a tablet at this object, and it turns whatever you're looking at into an augmented reality depending on the app that you've got for the device at the time. And they're coming out with more and more apps all the time. And there's also a company called CoSpace EDU, and they make basically a programming page and a programming app that allows you to put stuff in a virtual world onto a MergeCube. So when the kids look at the MergeCube, they can see their actual creations. That can be quite expensive, but this is actually, you can do this all for free. So if you go to and Google something called MergeCube paper, and the word there is MergeCube, you can find the paper and you can print it out and make the cube out of paper. And then a lot of the apps are free. And I really recommend, to get yourself started, to get an idea of what it feels like, is Cube. Cube is quite enjoyable and quite fun, but there's a lot of other cool, interesting apps that go along with that. I've only discovered this in about the last week or so, and it's a bit of a winner. I'm still tinkering around with it and figuring out what I can do with it, and I'm learning new things about it all the time. It's quite an interesting piece of technology. The real legit one, like a real MergeCube, it's made out of like EVA foam or something like that. It cost me $30, but you can do the whole thing for free. You don't have to pay for it. I just like to have a real genuine one so I don't have to keep remaking them over time. So the next thing of technology I want to show you, this sounds a little bit silly, and we haven't used it much this year, but we've used it in years gone by, is walkie-talkies. Walkie-talkies are really handy if you're doing something around the school and you need to communicate with people far away. We used this one a lot last year during our space experiment. We pretended that we had astronauts on a different planet, and so we're using this to communicate to our astronauts, and they had another one at their end. And so it's a good way to talk to people if you're at a distance. If you're thinking about buying walkie-talkies, the important thing to remember as a teacher, you want to get something that's relatively cheap but has good reliability and distance, and I would get rechargeable batteries, because these go through batteries really fast. So these can be quite handy. Even on things like cross country, we used them last year for the teachers to keep in touch with each other and see where the tail end of the race was and things like that, and make sure people are okay and all that sort of stuff. The next thing I'm going to show you is drones. Now, it sounds a little bit weird to have drones at school, but they can be really fun, and it's good. There's a lot of different things that you can apply them for. You just got to be a little bit flexible in your thinking about how you'd use them. We use them for space, and so as an example, this is an infrared drone. So it works on sensors. So it's an indoor drone, and we use this as a lunar module to practice pretending like you're in space, because it gives the illusion of zero gravity, and then because it's all self-flying and that, and then we use this one as a lunar rover. And these are both really cheap. This one was $20, 20 Kiwi dollars, so that's nothing. And then this one was a little bit more expensive. It was about $60, and I picked this one up on sale, but that's been really good. And one of the cool things about it, having drones, is that it can teach kids that aren't really into ball sports and things like that a little bit of dexterity. A little bit of dexterity and things like that. Also, being calm and concentrating, because you've got to take your time. If you're too fast with it, it won't pick up your senses properly. So it's good at that way. And it's an interesting activity to do during rainy days too. If there's a group of you, you can play games with it and stuff like that. So this was a good buy. So if you see these, this is one of the Air Hog toys, Air Hog Supernova. So if you can find one of these cheaply, these are quite fun as well. Don't fly it outside, because you'll never see it again. There's no sensor on the top, and so it'll just fly and fly and fly and fly and fly. And you'll see your money flying away into the heavens. The next thing that I want to show you, now people may or may not agree with this, is I have an Alexa in the classroom. And I specifically bought the Alexa for my classroom. I borrowed Google Home of someone. Google Home is comparable to Alexa, but they don't retail them in New Zealand, I don't think. I was lucky enough to borrow one off a friend who got theirs from overseas, and I just trialed it to see what having a personal assistant in the classroom was like, and it is super helpful. Like, I walk through the door first thing in the morning and I start telling Alexa to set alarms and timers and put on some music for me while I'm setting up for the day, and it's helpful in that way. But there's a lot of educational apps that they put on there. The fact that you can use it to help kids spell. So if I've got a lot of dictionaries in the classroom already, but if you're wanting to spell something fast and you're occupied with somebody else, go check the spelling with Alexa and she'll help spell it out. Also, at the end of the day, if you need to do some complex calculations or something and you need a fast answer, she's good in that way too. You're not having to fossick in your pockets for a calculator or anything like that. I can just ask her what the question is. So she's good in that way as well. And like I say, there's a lot of cool educational apps. You can get her to read stories to the children, play pick a path stories, play all kinds of games and stuff like that. So she's really helpful and money well spent. If you're not sure about it, I'd try and borrow one from someone first and see what you think of it. And you can, I've got the larger one. I'll just grab it. I love it how I refer to her as like an actual person, but she kind of feels like that after a while. So I got the larger one, so the speakers are a little bit louder, and so the sound carries to the back of the room. But you can get what's called the Echo Dot, and it's about that big, same diameter, circumference, but she's only about that tall. And so if you're just using it for yourself in the corner of the room, listen to some music first thing in the morning, the news, ask yourself some questions, that would be a good one. This is a good one for a full classroom. And then all the kids can hear if they're all gathered around doing an activity together. One of the last things that I'm going to share with you today is, it's probably the oldest piece of technology in the room, but it's probably my most favorite because I use it. I haven't used it too much very recently, but I used to use it quite a lot, and that's her in the corner there. It's my sewing machine. So that's an old K98 Singer sewing machine, and it's about 80 years old or so, but it's not necessarily the sewing machine, that make of sewing machine. She's interesting and beautiful to look at because I've restored it and it works beautifully, but just having a sewing machine in the classroom is quite nice too. There are a lot of children these days that, it's the irony that I'm online doing this to you, but there's a lot of kids online playing video games, Fortnite, all that sort of stuff. And to actually be able to create something with your hands and have something physically come out of it at the end, it can be quite enjoyable too. And we've used it for like heaps and heaps of projects that not only the kids have enjoyed because there's a physical thing that's come out of the end of it and it's theirs that they get to keep forever, but also you can use it to make things that are meaningful to the class. So we we've used it to make flags in the past that represent the classroom, and costumes and all kinds of stuff. And those are things that sometimes the kids remember forever. And so I would highly recommend, if you've got a little bit of a space, to get yourself a sewing machine. And you can pick them up really cheaply these days, secondhand sewing machines. They start off at about $100, and that's like a modern sewing machine. And yeah, I do recommend having one, and it's a handy thing to have. Like if a kid accidentally splits a jumper or something, you can quickly whack it through the sewing machine or something like that, just to fix it up. I've fixed my own clothes using the sewing machine, so they're definitely handy. There are, like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of other standard pieces of technology that most teachers would have, modems, all that sort of malarkey. One of the other things that I didn't mention is Apple TV, but that's a necessity because of the environment that I work in. We don't have smart boards in these prefab rooms, and so we mirror our laptops onto a TV display unit, and so an Apple TV is a necessity. But that gives you a lot of access to other things that you can do to using the TV that you don't have with a smart board. So hopefully that's helped someone out there with some ideas of something. If anyone wants to ask any questions about any of the things that I've shown today, please by all means leave a comment in the comments line below. Always like to answer people's questions and help out where I can. And if you've got any ideas of technology that you use in your classroom, I'd love to hear from you. For now, ka kite anō. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time on Mr. Ashley's Place. See you later, boys.